This is hashtag history episode 159. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And I am so excited about this week's topic for a couple of reasons. For one, American presidents have just always been one of my things. I can't really explain it, but it's one of the major reasons why I am a history buff. I just love this stuff, okay? I love this stuff. And two, because the format of this episode is a bit more of a compilation, a greatest hits or fails list, if you will, because this week we will be discussing the American presidents, all of them.
Really?
Well, most of them.
Okay.
I'll get to that in a minute. You're like, really? And just
like,
looked at the clock. I saw your eyes dart to the clock like, no. I overpromised and will still over deliver. You'll see.
Okay.
This topic was inspired by someone near and dear to me that's a major supporter of the podcast, and she inspired me for this episode. As we hear from a lot of listeners, both those that are history lovers and those that are history haters, a lot of them have shared about how much they have forgotten about history since high school, or even that they never learned about many of the things that we talk about on this podcast in high school. And so while I was talking with this friend, she was sharing with me that she was struggling to remember many of the presidents.
I mean, I never knew them.
See, and me, I'm like, this is, I've talked about this a zillion, quadrillion times on the podcast, is my memories conflate between like, what did I actually learn in history? And because I was, as a high schooler, I was a nerd. Yeah. So what was I just learning on my own?
Yeah.
Outside of high school. And I do know my learning all of the presidents in sequential order and all of their first ladies, that definitely wasn't in the curriculum and not expected of me. That was something that I did on my own.
Right.
But I do think that that's fair, right? There are 40 plus dudes that have served as president. It is totally normal and natural that we're going to forget a few of them here and there. I think we all know about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln.
Who?
And and the Orange Man, of course.
Oh, yes, the popsicle.
The poopsicle. But there are so many that are so easily forgotten. And so what I would like to do with this week's episode is list every single one of our presidents and give you some quick tidbits about each of them. That way, the next time you're trying to remember who Millard Fillmore was, the 13th president, and why he mattered, because you may need to know a fact or two about him at a random trivia night.
Okay.
Perhaps you will recall not only his name, you may actually remember it, but you may also recall that he was the very last Whig president. I'll explain why that matters later. You may remember that he signed the Compromise of 1850, or perhaps the detail you will remember is that he actually married his former teacher.
Oh, yeah. I'd remember that.
That's the one you might remember. Because that is precisely what I intend to do with this episode. I'm going to tell you a few quick things that you should know about each of our presidents, their accomplishments, their downfalls, and how they shaped American history. But I'll also, of course, throw in some random juicy details, like how 29th President Warren G. Harding wrote approximately 1,000 pages in sexy love letters to his mistress, all of which have since been made public by the Library of Congress.
Nice.
This goes without saying that there is some bias that comes into play with putting together an episode like this, right? That is the nature of historiography. It is at the discretion of the historian what they personally believe to be interesting or noteworthy enough to include in their research. And so that's certainly the case here as well, and not something that I'll shy away from. The few facts and details I'm going to share about each of the presidents were selected by me personally, which means these are the things that I personally felt most important, or in some cases, just the most interesting or juicy to include.
Nice.
Okay, and now finally, I did, of course, expect this episode to be long. When I was doing my research, obviously, we're listing off facts and details about 40 plus individuals. But let's just say it started to get long when I was doing my research, like longer than even what I had anticipated. And so I did decide to chop off this episode at our 25th president.
Oh.
And then I will pick up the remainder in a part 2 episode next season.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you feel you feel
Okay.
a little better? We feel this is a little more manageable. So I'll pick up the remainder in a part 2 episode next season. Even still, this one's a long one. So relax, get out a notepad, grab a snack.
Will there be a test at the end? Please, God, say no.
Yeah, like I should. No, if I remember in 3 hours when we finish recording to quiz you, I might. So everyone else though, relax, grab a snack, or in our case, grab a drink.
Oh, or two.
Or two.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Hashtag History,
The podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike.
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
Okay, so this cocktail was kindly brought to us by Charlie and Liv's auntie. I don't know which one.
This one was Samantha, my
Okay.
sister Samantha. Yeah.
Okay. Well, she bought us a cocktail, and thank you so much, Sam. And her only message to us was, "Had to do it." Shoulder shrug.
If I'm remembering correctly, this is because if you all may recall, she sponsored the entire
Yes.
season last season.
Yes.
And so then when we opened up cocktail sponsorship slots again for this season, they've actually, we're just so lucky. Literally, we're so lucky.
I
We
know,
have had
yeah.
every cocktail of the podcast sponsored for like almost 5 years now.
Mhm.
But when we opened it back up, it filled up super quickly with the exception of one. There was like a singular one
And
cocktail
I'm sure
that
you told her that.
exactly. I just made a comment to her because I just said like, oh my gosh, now that you haven't taken up all the slots, everyone's taken them with the exception of one. It literally was like 5 minutes later. I got
Of
an email
course.
that
Of course.
Charlie and Livy's aunt had sponsored another cocktail. So.
You guys are related. So
Yep. It's facts. Facts.
Well, thank you, Sam.
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Hmm.
This week we will be drinking the president cocktail.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Which president?
Just
the.
the.
Okay.
Yeah. If you ask the orange melting popsicle, him.
Although I would say that this drink is his coloring.
Oh, man.
We laugh so we don't cry.
Yep. There's been a lot of that going around. Okay. The president contains rum, orange juice, lemon juice, and grenadine. It's simple. It's sweet, probably, and it sounds good.
Yeah. And I think mine's going to taste extra good because the rum that I had was Malibu pineapple rum.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I did go shopping I needed orange juice. And so I had the small thought for 0.2 seconds. Like maybe I'll just grab some rum while I'm getting orange juice. And I'm like, what are you talking about, you fool?
rum.
You have pineapple rum.
What's not to like about a little piney pine rum?
You see? Okay.
Okay.
Cheers.
Well, cheers. Yeah.
Oh my God. So good.
Ooh. She's a little strong, though.
I think because mine is pineapple rum,
you
maybe
probably
I'm
don't
just
taste
getting
it as much.
pineapple. So good. And I don't know if Leah wants me to confess this on air.
Yes.
I did give her the warning before we started recording that I may or may not have sent this via email at 10 o'clock at night or whenever it was.
There was three points on there, and one of the points
was an easy yes. And that point was, hey, tomorrow night's episode that we're recording is very long. Should we double our drink? And she responded immediately and emphatically.
Yeah, I did.
So
I need a drink or two. I need two.
I think not only is this episode going to be a long one and we're going to need a lot of libations to make our way through it, but also the actual drink itself, like
It's small.
It's so small.
Yeah.
It's a dinky drink.
So I doubled it.
Yeah, maybe we would have doubled it anyway, even if this had been a 30-minute episode.
Yeah. Honestly, it is a little dinky drink, and I could probably finish it, my first serving of it, before we're done with this cocktail segment.
Before we're done with John Adams.
Yeah.
Who was the second, everybody?
Yeah. I knew that because I've watched Hamilton.
There you go. And Hamilton will, of course, certainly come up.
Nice.
What's your rating here?
Oh, rating. I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
I might go 9 because of the pineapple. It's just so good. The pineapple's so good.
Yeah. So just a quick little tidbit about this. I did find this recipe on Difford's Guide. And according to that website, the history of the President cocktail goes all the way back to the recipe in Harry Craddock's 1930 book, The Savoy Cocktail Book, which, for anyone interested in purchasing a copy for yourself, ranged in price online from about $21 all the way up to over $700. Yeah. So cheers to the internet for saving me money so I don't have to buy the book.
No kidding.
And cheers to Harry for creating what is a delicious, wonderful drink. So
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
That's it. Let's get into these prezzies.
Yes, let's do it.
And thank you to Sam.
And thank you again for sponsoring this cocktail and so many other things. She sponsors my life, essentially. When she comes over, she brings coffee. When we go out, she buys dinner. She's always holding a baby for me. So, yes, thank you for your sponsorship of me. All right. So, although it can be difficult to remember all 40 plus presidents, I am confident that every American on the planet would get the answer correct when asked who was the first president of the United States of America. That was, of course, George Washington. George Washington was president from 1789 to 1797, serving 2 4-year terms. He was unanimously elected his first term by the Electoral College, which I just think is really phenomenal, really amazing. Unanimously. Like it
speaks to his character.
Exactly. It speaks to his character, and so much of his legacy and the legacy that he established in the presidency is a result of his character. He rose to political fame after having served as the successful commander of the Continental Army during the American Revolution. He was responsible for contributing to or presiding over much of our foundational documents and structure, such as the U.S. Constitution, the very title of president, the establishment of the first cabinet level departments, and more. Perhaps one of the biggest things that he did insofar as legacy and foundation is concerned is when he stepped away from the presidency at the end of his second term. Term limits were not established until 1951 with the 20th.
Which is crazy.
But they are established, people, okay? They're in the Constitution.
Check yourself. Actually, check the Constitution.
Check. If it has not been burned yet, please refer to the original document. So term limits at this time and for a century later would not be established in the Constitution. And most people actually wanted Washington to continue serving as president kind of indefinitely. And I don't think that is particularly surprising, right? These are people that not only felt that he was doing a good job, but they had also lived under the rule of a king for so long. Americans didn't know otherwise.
Yeah.
It goes to that quote from Hamilton, the musical, where King George says, they say George Washington's yielding his power and stepping away. Is that true? I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
I'm perplexed. Okay. This was really important to Washington as he saw it as a rejection of monarchy, of a president acting as a king, and he established a peaceful transfer of power. This set a precedent of 2 terms that would last until the 1930s. Not until the 1930s would a president ever serve more than 2 terms, but we'll talk about that later when we get there. I just find that so fascinating, right? That there were no term limits set by the Constitution, and yet because it's what Washington did, no one ever exceeded.
Yeah.
And no one ever attempted to exceed that until the 1930s. I think a longtime rumor and belief about Washington is that he had wooden teeth. I don't know if you've heard this theory.
Yeah, I think it was in an episode of Fairly Odd Parents that I heard that.
Like, where did I have this rumor or theory in my mind as well? But apparently several of us do. This is false. He did not have wooden teeth. He did, however, wear dentures primarily made up of teeth extracted from enslaved people.
Oh, great.
By the time of his inauguration, he only had one of his real teeth left. Much of his tooth loss can be accounted for by the lack of dental hygiene that existed at the time, including the medication that was used to treat smallpox back then. The medication that was used to treat smallpox back then, apparently it just like completely destroyed your teeth. And then one final thing that I do want to address is simply that his notoriety isn't universal across all demographics and human experiences. For me, if you say George Washington, I'm instantly like, oh yeah, the first American president, commander of the Continental Army, the Mount Vernon guy, right? But this isn't true for everyone. When I was reading Kamala Harris's autobiography, The Truths We Hold, years ago, she talks about how, having grown up in a primarily Black neighborhood, the first George Washington she ever learned about was actually George Washington Carver. And so when she first learned about President George Washington in school, she was super confused as a young kid because none of the facts that she learned about him lined up with the facts that she had learned about the George Washington she knew. So I just think this is like really interesting and important perspective for all of us to have, that not all of our experiences are the same. And even though I started off this episode with everyone knows who he is, maybe they don't.
Well, I mean, especially too, not just like cultural demographics within the U.S., but I mean, we have listeners I know outside of the U.S. as well. I'm sure they don't know one president from the other. You
and
know
guess
what?
You don't need to.
No, other than the orange popsicle.
And really, he stands out amongst the rest. He does. The rest are white as opposed to orange. All right, on to the next. And what a disappointment he was. John Adams. John Adams was the second president of the United States and served one term from 1797 to 1801. I say he was a disappointment mostly in comparison to George Washington, not only legacy wise, but physically too. Adams was 5'7" in comparison to Washington, who was 6'2".
That was tall for back then.
Super tall for back then. Washington was a really big guy, both in stature and in legacy. He commanded a lot of respect and authority, and Adams just not so much.
Yeah.
Not to quote from Hamilton the musical too much, because, trust me, this won't be the last time.
Yeah.
But King George literally refers to Adams in the musical as, quote, John Adams. I know him. That can't be. That's that little guy that spoke to me all those years ago. What was it? 85. That poor man. They're going to eat him alive. Unquote.
Yep.
Adams did, of course, have some successes, and as only the second president in American history, established a lot of legacy and precedent. For one, he was the first president to ever live in the unfinished White House, where he moved in there in 1800. For those that don't know, Philadelphia was the original capital of the United States and continued to serve as the temporary capital until Washington, D.C. and the White House was ready. Adams was credited for keeping America out of a war with France at this time, something that the U.S. really could not afford to engage in when we were still so fresh off the American Revolution, not to mention that America was still in its formative years and foreign policy was very much still new and developing. Adams was criticized, however, for how he responded to Americans that disagreed with the federal government's decision to not get involved in a foreign conflict by issuing a series of 4 laws known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. As I describe these acts, you will unfortunately see some very close parallels to 2025. These acts made it a crime for people to criticize the government, and even gave the president the right to deport non-citizens determined to be dangerous. These acts were extremely controversial, considering the implications that they have on First Amendment rights and civil liberties. 3 of these 4 acts were repealed not long after they were first established. However, the Alien Enemies Act, which allows the president to detain or deport citizens of an enemy nation during wartime or invasion, is still in effect today. We can't talk about Adams without talking about his wife, Abigail, because really she's, let's be honest, the more influential character here. She's the one that penned the infamous "Remember the Ladies" line. And over the course of their relationship, the two exchanged more than 1,000 letters, many of which demonstrate that John really relied on Abigail for advice and feedback. The final thing I'd like to say about Adams is that he was Washington's vice president before becoming president himself. Adams's vice president was actually his like arch nemesis slash frenemy, Thomas Jefferson. For a very brief period of time at the start of American presidential history, the vice presidency was given to the person who was the runner up, which would be so fascinating if that was still a practice today. And I mean, I think like
some pros.
That's what I was going to say. Like there's kind of some pros to that approach.
Yeah. Like if it is someone who has opposing views from you, it might be nice to have like a little bit of back and forth. Like that. I don't know, like a little. I
completely agree. If I mean, I'm like struggling not to say all the things I want to say.
I know.
But if the Orange Man wasn't president, if you know, if it was someone that I'm just, you know, I don't think I'm being particularly political by saying someone that just was a professional person, there may actually be pros to that approach. I think that we struggle to see that potential approach because of who's currently in office.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting practice. I see why it went away. It would be interesting to experiment with it once again. Anyway, Adams and Jefferson, they were not often big fans of one another. And I just think this particular story is so funny. Both Adams and Jefferson actually died on the same day.
Oh, I didn't know that. See, and look at me learning something.
And guess which day it is. This is so wild. July 4th, 1826, which was the exact 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Is that crazy?
That is crazy.
And apparently Adams's very last words were, quote, Thomas Jefferson survives.
God damn him.
Unquote. Unbeknownst to him, Jefferson had actually passed away a few hours before.
Oh my God. So they were real true rivals.
It's so interesting. There's books about just them and their frenemy relationship because they were like allies and supporters of one another at one time. They grow apart. And then in their later years, like in the last 10 years or so of their lives, they start writing letters to each other again and like developing this fondness for each other once again.
Yeah.
Speaking of Thomas Jefferson, Jefferson was the third president of the United States, serving 2 terms from 1801 to 1809. He is most famous for being the primary author of the Declaration of Independence and is therefore also constantly held up in American history as a hypocrite who wrote that all men are created equal while enslaving more than 600 people during his lifetime, more than any other American president.
Well, I mean, he didn't mean black people.
So he wasn't being a hypocrite.
No.
These people that he enslaved include Sally Hemings, who was a woman that he kept enslaved at his Monticello plantation and whom he had at least 6 children with. During his presidency, perhaps the most substantial thing that he did was oversee the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the country. The 4th president of the United States was James Madison, who served 2 terms from 1809 to 1817. He's considered to be the father of the U.S. Constitution for his contributions in getting it ratified between his work on the Federalist Papers and his drafting of the Bill of Rights. He was the shortest president in American history, standing at only 5'4" and weighing only about 100 pounds.
Oh, itty bitty boy.
He's so little. He was president during the War of 1812, which we talked about in our episode 123. We also talked about Madison pretty extensively in our episode 94 about hidden presidential illnesses because this dude was sick AF.
Yeah.
Hamilton musical reference here once again. You will see several subtle hints of Madison's illness in the musical because the person that's acting as Madison in the musical is always seen with a handkerchief in his hand and is oftentimes seen coughing into it throughout the musical. In his early life, Madison suffered seizures. He had bouts of malaria, tuberculosis, smallpox, yellow fever, you name it. But in 1813, while president, he came down with bilious fever that was so intense and caused him so much fatigue that he was physically incapable of reading and examining documents brought to him. He had a fever for 3 straight weeks.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
Horrific, accompanied by vomiting, diarrhea, all the things. We mentioned this quote in our episode 94, but it's just such a good one that I have to use it here again. His wife, who was so exhausted from caring for him day and night, wrote that, quote, "Now that I see he will get well, I feel as if I should die myself with fatigue," unquote. James Monroe was the 5th U.S. president, serving 2 terms from 1817 to 1825. He served during a time in American history that is considered the era of good feelings, which, OMG, that sounds so lovely.
Oh.
An era of good feelings. That sounds so nice. It was called this because this period of time in American history was marked by an overwhelming sense of unity and optimism. The U.S. had just come out of the War of 1812, and so it was a time when a lot of Americans had a sense of pride and nationalism. We see this a lot in the years following war. You know, the
war or anything, like the years following COVID,
9/11.
Like, yeah.
100%.
More of a sense of unity, you know.
100%.
Some people might disagree on that, but
no, I mean, I guess some people might, but I think I disagree with them because like history shows that
I guess they're wrong.
They would be wrong because history does show that like the greatest peaks of nationalism and unity is always after tragedy.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we know that this unity would not last for long because come the 1850s and 60s, the country would literally split in half as a result of civil tension. But during Monroe's presidency, he passed the Monroe Doctrine. This was a really, really big one, stating that Europe could never again interfere in affairs of the Americas, such as trying to colonize them and whatnot. He passed the Missouri Compromise, also a giant deal. This is the law that admitted Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state, creating a balance. And it prohibited slavery in the Louisiana Purchase territory north of the 36 degree by 30 parallel. This really was just putting a Band-Aid on a very large wound, but a Band-Aid nonetheless that cooled the tension and the debates about how new states would be admitted and whether the states would permit or prohibit slavery. He also acquired Florida from Spain during his presidency. Whether we can consider this a failure or a success is still to be determined. I'm kidding. We have a lot of really lovely Florida listeners. Hello. Hi. Thank you for being here. And again, the Monroe era was a good era. Such a good era, in fact, that other than Washington, Monroe was the only president in American history to ever run essentially unopposed in his second term and acquired all but one electoral vote, which is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now on to our 6th president, John Quincy Adams, who makes up one of the 2 sets of father-son presidents that we have in American history. We have already talked about his dad, John Adams, who was Washington's VP and then became the 2nd U.S. president. But now it's Quincy Adams's turn. And that turn did not come easily. Adams won in the extremely controversial and contentious election of 1824. Now, this all is just so fascinating. In 1824, there were 4 major candidates for the presidency. And remember, this is before the United States had morphed into a 2-party system. So all of these candidates were members of what was called the Democratic Republican Party. These candidates were John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, whom we will talk about shortly, Henry Clay, who was the Speaker of the House of Representatives at the time, and William Crawford, Secretary of the Treasury. What is so fascinating about this election is that Jackson won both the popular vote and the electoral vote, but didn't secure the majority required by the Constitution. So essentially, you can win the popular vote. You can even win the electoral vote. But if you do not have the majority of the electoral votes, you do not win. Isn't that pretty wild?
Yeah.
At this time in 1824, there were 261 electoral votes available, meaning that a singular candidate would need 131 to win. Jackson had 99, Adams had 84, Crawford had 41, and Clay had 37. Per the 12th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the election then goes to the House of Representatives to determine what to do. And here, Henry Clay, the Speaker of the House, who was no longer in the running for president as he had received the least amount of electoral votes, essentially persuaded his colleagues to cast their votes for Adams. And that's precisely what happened. And then, surprise, surprise, when Adams became president, he made Clay his Secretary of State.
I wonder what happened in that room.
Yeah, the room where it happened. Exactly. Corrupt much, right? This led to massive controversy and division. So much so that it is here that we see the American political landscape change drastically and officially shift into two separate parties. The National Republicans, this is Adams and Clay, and the Democratic Republicans led by Andrew Jackson. Quincy Adams was a one-term president serving from 1825 to 1829 and had a largely unimpressive presidency. Because of, what appeared to be pretty blatant corruption during the election, he was met with a hostile Congress that stopped much of any progress he attempted. And what he did attempt, he didn't do well. Really, he's more so known for the things he did pre-presidency and post. Pre-presidency, he was the primary author of the Monroe Doctrine, which we talked about earlier. That was a really big deal. And post-presidency, he was a vocal abolitionist who actually tried and won a rather major anti-slavery case in the Supreme Court. A group of Africans had been kidnapped from Africa, sold into slavery in Cuba, and there they revolted against their captors before they were eventually apprehended by the U.S. Adams defended the Africans in the case and won before the Supreme Court, stating that they had the right to resist unlawful slavery and that they were people, not property.
All right.
I would say keyword there is unlawful slavery because there is lawful slavery.
At this time, yes.
Given the contention of the 1824 election, it's perhaps no surprise that the seventh president of the United States, serving two terms from 1829 to 1837, was none other than Andrew Jackson. We, I think I speak collectively on behalf of the both of us, don't love him. We actually did a two-parter about him in the very, very early days of the podcast. But to quickly summarize with the things that I think are the most important and noteworthy, he's the guy on the $20 bill, which is funny since he did not trust paper money. He once killed a man in a duel. So yes, we have had a murderer as president.
We've probably had a few.
Yeah, I know. This is the first and known one. During this same duel, the man that Jackson killed shot Jackson in the chest close to his heart. Jackson obviously survived this wound, but he would actually live with this bullet in his chest for the rest of his life. He was a major wartime hero during the American Revolution. Because of that split of political parties that I mentioned earlier, he's considered one of the founders of the Democratic Party. He married a woman while she was still married to another man. And this was really, really scandalous gossip at the time. This gossip was so intense and so brutal that it actually caused his wife, Rachel, to have a heart attack and die just 3 weeks before Jackson won the election. It is said that at her funeral, Jackson said, quote, "May God Almighty forgive her murderers. I never can," unquote. Perhaps the most notable thing about Jackson's presidency, however, was his passage of the Indian Removal Act, which led to the Trail of Tears, resulting in the deaths of more than 5,000 Cherokees. It was a pretty widely known thing during Trump's first term that he was a big fan of Andrew Jackson and actually had a portrait of Jackson put up in the Oval Office. This was a really controversial thing at the time. I tried to do some research to see if he has brought back Jackson's picture during his second and current term. The most clear answer I got is that there is at least a picture of Jackson in the cabinet meeting room. But to be honest, I could only stare at the Temu gold furnishings in the Oval Office for so long before I decided I don't care enough to know if there's a portrait of Jackson in there. It's not worth my energy. And the truth is that would be the least controversial thing about this term. It's like, could we go back to the simpler time when him putting up a portrait of Jackson was a big deal?
Right. Right. By the way, I'm on glass number 2.
Well, I ended up just dumping all mine into one. So I could be as well.
Okay.
I don't know. So we've shared a lot of facts about various presidents at this point, but I want to pause here because I think this singular fact alone makes this next particular president a memorable one. And I think this is something that people should remember because it is important. The 8th president of the United States, Martin Van Buren, who served one term from 1837 to 1841, was the very first president in American history to be born an American. Every other president up to this point had been born a British subject, either in Britain or in the British colonies. Mm-hmm. I think this is such a fascinating fact. And yes, I did once win a trivia night because of this question alone. So this is all important information. You never know. You might win a gift card. And that's about all you need to know about Van Buren. I don't mean to be rude, but there really isn't much else.
He was the ancestor of the Van Buren sisters, who we did an episode on.
You're so right. I forgot about them. Are they the ones that rode the bikes?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a really fun episode. Yeah, there you go. So there is a second interesting fact about him.
Not about him, but about his descendants.
Barely about him, adjacent to him. There's a reason that he didn't win re-election, nor was he successful the 2 additional times he campaigned for the presidency in later years. There really is not much more to say. He was Jackson's vice president, so he continued many of the same policies of his predecessor, including the forceful removal of Native Americans from their lands. Perhaps the most significant thing to happen during his presidency was the Panic of 1837. This was a major economic depression that the United States experienced, lasting all the way into the 1840s, that Van Buren inherited from the economic crisis that Jackson's banking decisions caused. But because Van Buren was president during the majority of this crisis, he was largely blamed for it, leading many to refer to him as Martin Van Ruin. and we see this a lot, right? If you are president at the time of a global or nationwide disaster, be it an economic crisis, a pandemic, high gas prices, whatever, it doesn't matter if the issue began with or was because of your predecessor, you will be the one blamed.
Yep.
The recap on our next president is going to be extra short because the 9th president of the United States of America, William Henry Harrison, was only president from 1841 to, 1841. Harrison died in office just 31 days after he was inaugurated, making this the shortest term of any president in American history. It's reported that he was not feeling great during his inauguration, and then he made matters far worse by giving the longest inaugural address in history, nearly 2 hours long, of him just him straight talking in wet, cold weather without a coat.
Oh.
I mean, that feels a little self-important.
Yeah.
Not long after this, he became severely ill with pneumonia. This pneumonia, compounded with his previous gastrointestinal issues, possibly brought on by the horrendous White House water sewage system, led to his very early death, only a month into the job. Because he died so early into his term, there isn't much more to say about him other than one really important fact. Harrison was the very first Whig president elected. That Democratic Republican Party that Jackson was the head of, because of Jackson and actually how many people grew to oppose him, that party split into 2 parties in the 1830s, leading to the formation of the Whig Party. We now have John Tyler, the 10th president of the United States, serving one term from 1841 to 1845, who became the first vice president in history to succeed to the presidency following the death of the president. I'm not a big fan of this guy, and something that people say a lot is that, you can't judge people now by what they did then. What were you going to say? Yes.
No, just someone wrote that about our Andrew Jackson. Like, I remember that was one of the first negative 100% comments we got, or reviews we got.
It was that
and we were like, how could you hold someone accountable for values that we have now back then? I'm like, that's literally what history is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's learning from our mistakes.
1,000,000%. And I do I do understand that standards change to some extent, but to our point with the Andrew Jackson episode, forcibly removing people from their land so that you can steal it has always been wrong.
Yeah.
Enslaving people, stealing them away from their countries, and then forcing them into, enslaved labor, that's always been wrong.
Yeah.
But I think what Tyler did during his presidency, we can all agree was wrong at the time and all the time, because what he did was specifically go against his constituents, the people that had put him in a position of power, so much so that his party literally exiled him. Tyler, a member of the Whig Party, vetoed a second bill for the establishment of a national bank, something that the Whigs were major supporters of and had propelled him to the presidency in the first place.
Why? Why did he do this?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's like, yeah, that's what. Well, I mean, never mind. Does everything circle around to Trump? Yes, it does. But it's like it's things that he campaigned on and said he was going to do and then didn't do.
Yeah.
When he did this, when he vetoed this second bill, his entire cabinet, with the exception of his Secretary of State, resigned. And then 2 days later, the Whig Party formally expelled Tyler, leaving him without a political party for the remainder of his presidency.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating, right? And also, cough, cough, if we've done it before in history, we can do it again, people.
Do it again, people.
You can leave the current president without a political party. It's happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler also began the process of annexing Texas. This was a super controversial decision, as this was the annexation of a large slave state. A few other interesting things about him: he was the first president to get married while president. His first wife died while serving as first lady. The first lady to die in office. There have been 3.
Mm-hmm.
He married his second wife 2 years later, a woman who was 30 years his junior.
Mm-hmm.
This was super controversial and made for a lot of hot goss. Between his 2 wives, Tyler would father 15 children, the most of any president.
Wow.
When he died, he became the one and only president to be buried under a Confederate flag. Boo. And shockingly, he had a grandchild that only just died this year in May of 2025 at the age of 96.
Whoa.
Can you imagine being able to say you were the grandchild of the 10th president of the United States?
What the hell? Time
Isn't
is
that
weird.
insane?
Time makes no sense. I don't get it.
It helps that he had 15 children, so one of those maybe.
So one of them he had when he was
he was 96.
Yeah.
but like, isn't that so insane?
Yeah.
His direct descendant just passed away a couple months ago. That's so crazy.
I have no words. Like,
I know.
I can't fathom that. That
I know.
Feels wrong.
It feels like that shouldn't be a fact.
Yeah.
But also maybe one that you'll win in a trivia night, because wow. Continuing on this long streak of one-term presidents, next up is 11th President of the United States, James K. Polk, who served from 1845 to 1849. Under Polk, the United States expanded massively, more than 1 million square miles of land, to be exact. When the annexation of Texas officially occurred, and with the victory in the Mexican-American War, which resulted in the U.S. acquiring California, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming, and parts of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
It goes without saying that Polk was a big manifest destiny guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was also a big slavery guy who had no qualms about admitting additional slave states to the Union. He kind of played both sides of the fence a bit, though, because publicly he would say that all of the people he personally owned were simply ones that he had inherited. But during his presidency, he secretly purchased multiple enslaved people to work on his Mississippi cotton plantation, including several children, the youngest being 10 years old.
I don't feel like inheriting versus purchasing really makes much of a difference, in my personal opinion.
It's fine. I acquired them. That makes it fine.
Sure.
It
don't care.
And I'm like, if you had and I'm using quote unquote, quotations around this, if you had the legal rights to acquire these people, then you have the legal rights to set them free.
For sure you did. Yep.
And really good riddance, Polk, because just 3 months after his one-term presidency ended, he contracted cholera and died.
Bye-bye, Polk.
Bye. The The 12th president of the United States, Zachary Taylor, was only in office for 16 months before he died of a kind of mysterious illness that historians still debate about today.
Can I be honest real quick? The last like 3 presidents,
never knew him.
I don't think I knew these names.
I'm thinking of Kiki Palmer. I'm sorry to this man. I do not know this man. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, then this joke isn't making sense.
Oh man,
it's very funny.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it.
Okay, I'll try to remember to send it to you. She's so funny. I think
she is funny.
Her delivery is so funny, and she's in an interview. She's being shown a picture of Dick Cheney, and she looks at it for a long time, and she's like, "I'm sorry to this man. I do not know this man." Yeah. That's what you sounded like just now. And I guess this is again where I am not a fair contributor to this conversation, because I'm like, how did you not know about Polk? What do you mean?
Yeah, no, Polk and Zachary Taylor, don't know ya. Zachary Taylor especially, and I know we're about to get into him. That's just the 2 widest names I've ever heard. Widest white boy names I've ever heard combined into one. I just
yeah. And now that they've been combined into one, they're so generic that now they're gone. They've gone over the head.
Who are we talking about?
I do wonder though if, as I tell you a little about him, if you've ever heard of this, because this is such a weird, wild story. Once I finish telling you about him, I do want to know if it like triggered any memory. At all.
I'm ready.
And if not, maybe this will be the new memory, because it is a pretty wild story.
Okay.
So on the 4th of July in 1850, he attended an event in the location where the Washington Monument was to be erected. At the event, he apparently ate an insane amount of cherries and milk. He then went back to the White House, where he drank a bunch of water. Over the next roughly 5 days, Taylor was going through it. Diarrhea, dehydration, vomiting, all the things, before on July 9th, he died.
Wow, maybe he caught the Philly funk.
Oh, hey, yeah, potentially. No, see, oddly though, the Philly funk was simultaneously the best long-term sickness I had and the worst long-term sickness I ever had. The most likely culprit was once again the horrific sewage lack of sanitation system at the White House.
Like, because remember, the White House was built on a swamp, people.
Yes.
DC is in swamplands.
100%. And this is, we've talked about this in many an episode, but I think in particular our Typhoid Mary episode, there was no
washing of hands,
sterilization. There was no washing of hands. There wasn't.
Yeah.
And so that's the most likely culprit, right? Is those like copious amounts of water that he drank back at the White House. But there are some historians who have said that the milk may have been bad, and or it was the combination of the highly acidic cherries mixed with the milk that took him out. Now, okay, so now that I've shared that little bit about him, did any of that ring a bell for you? Still no?
Nope. A bit, maybe like something about cherries and milk, like a combination of that, like. But I didn't know it was in relation to a former president.
Okay.
Whose name I already forgot. Like, literally, what is his name? Mike Green? Like,
Mike Green, Mike Brown. I'm trying to think about Drew Johnson.
Michael Johnson?
Is that
who we're talking about?
Michael Jackson. What was this again? Again, I am not a fair contributor to this conversation because this has always fascinated me. But I do remember, like, as a kid, learning that fact about him, about the cherries and the milk, and then for like a decade being terrified of drinking cherries or like eating cherries and drinking milk within the same 24 hours because I thought it was going to kill me.
Yep.
I did see, before we close out on Mike Green, Thomas Brown, Zachary Taylor, I did see an interesting fact about Zachary Taylor that he never voted in an election prior to his own, which, if I'm being truthful, I actually don't find interesting at all. I simply find that irresponsible. Moving on.
How old was he when he was elected?
He was 64 years old at the time of his inauguration. So he's an irresponsible old man.
How did he get elected? Was he a politician? Like, was he in politics
was
prior to that?
And he was like a war hero, which this is at a time 50 plus years after the American Revolution, but there's still a lot of war heroes around at this time, and they still hold people still revered them a lot at this time.
Okay. Was he the last one standing and they were like, I guess we're going with him?
Except for a couple cherries will take this dude out. All right. So now Millard Fillmore. So Taylor's vice president, Millard Fillmore, became president immediately following Taylor's death, making him the 13th president of the United States, serving from only 1850 to 1853. And if you're doing your math there with those years, you know that Fillmore only served long enough to complete Taylor's term. He never campaigned for re-election himself.
He was like, I'm done.
Yeah, he was like, I hate this job.
I mean, I feel that, brother. Like, you know what I mean?
This is the most unrewarding, unforgiving job I've ever had in my life.
To be quite frank, I'm surprised so many people who are presidents run for re-election.
Right.
Like, I don't know. It doesn't
I could never be tempted. Never.
No.
Now, I did tease about Fillmore in the intro, so let's just hit on the points that I briefly mentioned there. Fillmore was the very last Whig president, meaning that he was the very last president in American history to not be affiliated with either the Republican or Democratic parties.
Mm-hmm.
During his presidency, he signed the Compromise of 1850, which did a multitude of things to squelch the high tensions that existed in the U.S. at this time, including but not limited to admitting California as a free state, making Utah and New Mexico territories where the residents there could decide about slavery on their own, and instituting the stricter Fugitive Slave Act, which meant that it was illegal for anyone to assist an enslaved person who was escaping. It required that federal marshals become involved in these runaway situations, and stated that fugitives were not entitled to a jury trial or to testify on their own behalf because they were not citizens, they were property.
Ooh.
The end.
Okay.
By Fillmore.
Bye, Fillmore. You suck.
You suck like the other 12 before you. For whatever reason, I always remember that Franklin Pierce, serving one term from 1853 to 1857, was the 14th president of the United States.
Well, you know all of them, so whatever.
you know what? That is fair.
This isn't shocking.
I do know them all, but if you were like to throw a like Benjamin Harrison right now off the top of my head, can't tell you which number he was. Franklin Pierce, I don't know. I always can. He was number 14. Okay. It's one of those things that just sticks in my brain. I think it could be for one of two reasons. One, he's kind of hot.
Okay, what? I'm gonna look at him. Just
okay. Wait. Do not look him up yet. Let me tell you this one thing before you look him up.
I'm not looking.
Okay, I'm watching your eyes. Listen, let me explain myself first.
Okay.
The bar is very, very low here
compared to past president.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like when someone who in an everyday scenario is maybe like a 6 or 7, but in an office setting amongst all of your other colleagues, they're like a 9 or a 10. Yeah, that's what I mean here. Is Franklin Pierce all that hot? But amongst the rest of the presidents, I mean, yeah. You know? Okay, so look him up. Let me know thoughts and opinions.
Do you know what it is? He's brooding.
Yeah.
He's got that broody.
He has a reason to brood. We'll get there.
Oh, God. He also has a receding hairline in all of these pictures, so...
But not a powdered wig. I'll take the natural hairline over a fake one.
Hey.
You know?
You know what?
The bar is low.
He's rocking it. He looks competent and broody. Hey, is this a real picture of him? This one? Like, is that a photograph? Are we on to photographs now?
It does look like one.
Yeah.
But like the hair,
that
right?
One. Yeah. There's something about that hair, yeah.
It's that it's there.
It's not white.
It's not white.
It's not a powdered wig. And I mean,
okay, look at what the related searches are.
Where?
Handsome Franklin Pierce, hottest president, handsome Franklin Pierce. See, Franklin Pierce, handsome.
Hey, who's this guy?
That is Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh, okay.
Hottest president.
Hottest U.S. president.
Do you see? So I'm not alone in this.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Oh yeah. I'm not alone in this. It would appear that other people on the internet feel as I do.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
I mean, so far I haven't looked at all the pictures of all of them, but side by side.
Mostly the same. So that might be reason number one, most likely, why I remember him. Mm-hmm. The second reason I think I always remember him is because of this horrifically tragic story. This is what I was alluding to when I say he has reason to brood.
Oh, okay.
Pierce and his wife had 3 sons, all of whom died in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Their first died in infancy. Their second died at the age of 4 from epidemic typhus. And their third, who was 11 at the time of his passing, died in a train accident just a few weeks before Pierce's presidential inauguration.
Okay.
His wife was absolutely distraught and actually saw their son's death as a punishment from God for her husband's political ambitions. Because of this, she refused to attend the inauguration and spent most of her time in the White House secluded in her room.
Don't blame her.
Don't blame her at all. This tragedy marked Pierce's presidency. His grief and his failing marriage played a major role in really not doing much during his presidency.
Also, don't blame him.
Yeah. That is the thing, is that all presidents are indeed actually human.
Like, that makes me think of Lincoln a lot, too.
Mm-hmm.
The Lincolns, yeah. Which we'll get to.
We will get to. We more so in our episode 94 about hidden presidential illnesses. We talk a lot about his depression in that episode. Yeah. The biggest thing that happened during Pierce's presidency, which ultimately set the country up for the upcoming Civil War, was his signing of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. If you would like a further breakdown of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, I recommend checking out our episode 98. But to summarize the best I can here, essentially the Kansas-Nebraska Act repealed the Missouri Compromise, which we talked about earlier under Monroe's presidency, allowing for each state to decide on their own about whether their state would be a slave state or a free state, meaning that places where slavery had previously been prohibited under the Missouri Compromise could now be considered for slavery. The state of Kansas itself was exceptionally controversial because it sat directly in the middle of a free state, Nebraska, and a slave state, Missouri. And so what this meant for Kansas was absolute destructive chaos for years. The next 7 years here would be considered Bleeding Kansas, as violence and riots broke out all across the state between pro and anti-slavery proponents. A total of 55 people would die as a result of this violence. The Kansas-Nebraska Act really changed history. It led to Bleeding Kansas. It led to the split of the Whig Party and the creation of the anti-slavery Republican Party. And it led to the ultimate buildup to the Civil War. And because of all of that, Smoking Hot Pierce was denied re-nomination by his party.
Yeah.
And by smoking hot, I once again do mean
just fine.
An office 10, an everyday 4.5.
He was just fine.
He was just really average, honestly.
It's okay. He was fine.
He was fine. It was fine. But if he worked in your office, would you be like, hey, Franklin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
So you would. If you passed him on the street, wouldn't even notice him. And now on to America's one and only bachelor president. James Buchanan, the 15th American president who served from 1857 to 1861, was the only bachelor president in American history.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. He never married. His one engagement that he did have broke off before he became president. There is some speculation amongst historians about his sexuality. There was a male friend of his that he was extremely close with and even lived with for a long period of time, but it's unclear. And as someone that is familiar with Buchanan, as someone that loves presidential history, but not someone who is an expert about him by any stretch, I really don't know if this is one of those scenarios where we are overlooking a gay figure in history because we don't want to admit that they were gay, or if this is us assuming he was gay simply because he never married.
Like, he could have been asexual. It could have truly just been circumstances.
Exactly. It may have been literally nothing at all.
Yeah.
Or he could have been gay, and that's been written out of history for a century now.
Yep.
Or more than a century now. There are a lot of books about him from experts that I recommend checking out if you want to dig into this deeper. One that is on my endlessly growing list of books to read is a book written by history professor Thomas J. Balcerski titled Bosom Friends, The Intimate World of James Buchanan and William Rufus King. If any listeners have a chance to check it out before I do, please report back.
Yeah, please do. When you were like, if anyone's interested, I was like, nope, already gonna tune you out. And then the title Bosom Friends kind of hooked me.
And now you're downloading it on Libby as we speak. The most important thing about Buchanan is not his sexuality, though, as is rarely ever the most important thing about any person.
Right.
The most important thing to discuss about Buchanan is how he essentially did nothing to halt the oncoming Civil War, and in fact, in many ways, propelled it by being a strong supporter of slavery and a supporter of the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision of 1857, which stated that Black people, whether free or enslaved, could not become U.S. citizens, had no rights, and that Congress could not ban slavery anywhere. This emboldened Southern states, which meant that at the tail end of Buchanan's presidency, when Abraham Lincoln was officially nominated to the presidency in the 1860 election, many of the Southern states seceded from the Union out of fear that Lincoln's presidency was going to end the institution of slavery and really their way of life. The 1860 election of Abraham Lincoln was massive and truly cannot be understated. Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States and served from 1861 to 1865 and was the very first Republican president, though it is, of course, worth mentioning that the Republican Party then is not what it is now. The Republican Party of 1860 was the party that was extremely anti-slavery, pro-civil rights. It was his becoming president that led to Southern states seceding and the start of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to summarize all that he did during his presidency, but to put it shortly, he was able to preserve the Union by defeating the Confederacy in battle, and he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which abolished slavery.
I just need everyone to understand how much Rachel just needed to cut out.
How much I'm holding back right now.
Holding back. She is being so strong, and you don't even know, because Abraham Lincoln is like,
oh my God,
her man. Yes, she's holding up a little doll of Abraham Lincoln.
It just happened to be sitting on my desk.
Like, she's obsessed with him, and so the fact that and we have a few more bullets to go through here,
but not many.
You are holding it back. And
I appreciate this acknowledgement. I really can't tell you.
Truly, I'm not joking, Rachel. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't tell you.
Mostly because you already you have an Abraham Lincoln episode planned next season.
I don't think it's something that I don't think I can ever touch. I really genuinely mean that.
I believe you. Yeah.
I don't think I can do it.
Yep.
But I do appreciate the acknowledgement. I really do. And this is very hard for me. Thank you for being aware.
I just want to say I see you.
I feel seen. Despite being a really polarizing figure, he did win re-election, the first president to do so since Andrew Jackson, more than 30 years prior.
Wow.
But of course, as we all know, just a few months into his second term and less than a week after the end of the Civil War, he became the first American president in history to be assassinated. He was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer and stage actor who assassinated Lincoln while he and his wife were attending a play. Longtime fans of the podcast know that I could talk about Lincoln for 100 years, but alas, I must move on.
You must.
I must. We must. Now on to who was my least favorite president up until our current one. Though it could be argued that the reason Trump is even president is because of the things that this guy did or did not do during his presidency.
Cool. Hit me with it.
Here he comes. Andrew Johnson was the 17th president of the United Andrew Johnson was the 17th president of the United States, serving for one term from 1865 to 1869, having served as Lincoln's vice president and then assuming the presidency following the assassination.
Wait,
yes.
When did the determination to not have the runner-up be vice president? That was
literally in Thomas Jefferson's presidency.
Thomas Jefferson, right? Because Thomas Jefferson in Hamilton was like, I can change that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
exactly. It lasted for two presidents.
Okay,
and that second president, John Adams, we already talked about. His VP was Jefferson, and they kind of hated each other for much of their lives. Okay. So it literally changed in the very next presidency. And I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because I am going to talk about Johnson being selected as vice president was actually a really significant thing. Mm-hmm. We did a whole episode about Johnson and his impeachment. That was episode 117, because yes, he was the first president in American history to be impeached.
And what did we learn in that episode?
Impeachment does not mean removal from office. slight delay on the Zoom, but
Yeah,
I
totally.
still felt it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
felt the unity. We talk in the episode all about why he was an awful president and why he was impeached, but in an attempt to quickly summarize it, Lincoln brought Johnson on as his VP in his second term in an attempt to soothe the tensions between the North and the South. Johnson was a Southerner who had very Southern values, but he was also a traditionalist and did not agree with the South seceding from the Union.
Okay.
Therefore, it kind of felt like a win-win to bring him on as his running mate. It goes back to what we said an hour ago when we started this episode about like maybe like the pros, right, of having a VP that does have opposing views. It would, however, end up being a lose-lose.
Mhm.
The largest objective of Johnson's presidency was, of course, Reconstruction, right? Bringing the country back together following the Civil War. And as I talked about in our episode 117, I am not at all suggesting that Lincoln had far different plans for Reconstruction. In fact, we know that he planned to provide a lot of lenience to the Southern states. But where Lincoln provided leniency, Johnson provided full-on freedom.
Mhm.
He allowed for several former Confederate leaders to return to their positions of power within their local governments. He issued tens of thousands of pardons, including to high-ranking Confederate soldiers and leaders. He would even save up some of his last pardons to grant none other than former Confederate President Jefferson Davis and Dr. Samuel Mudd, the doctor who had helped John Wilkes Booth's broken leg while he was on the run after killing Lincoln.
This definitely won't have any repercussions on the country moving forward, right?
There,
Like his leniency definitely is not.
and that's why I know that you're being sarcastic. That's why I was saying he is my least favorite president under Trump being my least favorite president. But would you not argue that had we been a little tougher on the South, we might not be in this position in our country now 100+ years later?
Mm-hmm.
It's a theory. It's a theory.
Mm-hmm.
Probably largest of all was the lack of protections that Johnson's plan afforded to recently freed Black Americans. Because of the people he allowed to return to positions of power, these people passed what became known as Black Codes. These Black Codes and eventual Jim Crow laws were essentially slavery without the title of slavery. They forced freedmen into yearly contracts for cheap labor, and if they rejected these arrangements, they could be arrested and eventually forced into unpaid labor. Slavery, but by a different name.
Mm-hmm.
It also restricted their rights to property, voting, business, and really created the roots of segregation throughout the states. Naturally, his Reconstruction plan did not go over well with the more radical Republicans in Congress, so much so that they actually passed a bill called the Tenure of Office Act in March of 1867, which essentially restricted the president's power by prohibiting him from removing certain officials without the approval of the Senate. So when Johnson did just that by attempting to remove Secretary of War Edwin Stanton from the cabinet, not once, but twice, without the proper approvals, the House of Representatives brought forth articles of impeachment for Andrew Johnson, making him the first president in American history to be impeached. However, failing to meet the 2/3 majority required to convict and officially remove Johnson from office, he would continue to serve out the remainder of his presidential term. Because once again, everyone, impeachment does not mean removal from office. And goodbye, Johnson.
Bye-bye.
We won't miss you. Our next president was a very popular name circulating at the time due to his being the general of the Union Army that led to the success in the Civil War. That is none other than 18th President Ulysses S. Grant, who served 2 terms from 1869 to 1877. Grant did several things during his presidency to protect Black rights, including supporting the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed voting rights for Black men. He signed the Civil Rights Act of 1875, and he established the Department of Justice with the goal to crack down on KKK violence.
Mm-hmm.
Things weren't all great during his presidency, though, of course. And Grant, who may have had ethical ideals and motives, did, however, have poor judgment of friends. His appointment of several friends of his that were not stand-up people led to several scandals during his presidency. Grant's two-term presidency was followed by another two-term president, that being Rutherford B. Hayes, the 19th president of the United States, who served from 1877 to 1881. Much of his presidency was spent restoring the reputation of the presidency following the scandals of Grant's administration. Hayes is most known for officially ending Reconstruction when he withdrew federal troops from the South. He also signed a bill that allowed female attorneys to appear before the U.S. Supreme Court for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. He also moved away from the policies of his predecessors where it related to Native Americans. He shifted away from forced removal, even advocating for the return of land to one particular tribe. But his approach was instead assimilation, something that we talk a lot about in our episode 43 about American Indian boarding schools.
Mm-hmm.
Hayes was from Ohio, and I find it so interesting that the very next president we're going to talk about was also from Ohio.
Didn't we talk about, aren't a larger majority of presidents from Ohio than other states or something? Like
a large percentage of them are. We talked about that with Mike from Necronomipod when he came on our podcast to talk about McKinley.
How do you remember that?
I remember that because he's from Ohio. Oh. And that's why he's like an Ohioan presidential
guru.
Yeah, he loves presidents that came from Ohio. That's how I remember that. Yeah.
Hi, Mike. You're probably not listening, but hi, Mike.
Hopefully, I think he might, though, because he and I still chat every now and then. And I did tell him that I was going to mention him in this episode because I do talk about him when we talk about McKinley. Coming up soon. Hi, Mike. Coming in as the 20th president to the United States, James A. Garfield served from 1881 to 1881. Sadly, Garfield would become the second president assassinated while in office. Because Garfield was assassinated less than 200 days into his term, there isn't much to say about his presidency in this condensed setting. So instead, I will talk very briefly about his assassination. As I have said a million times before on the podcast that I hope to one day talk about a particular topic, I actually officially do have plans to talk about Garfield's assassination in the next season. I've already written the outline for it, so it is officially happening.
Okay.
And now that I've said it out loud, this is the contract.
We're holding you to it.
But to make it brief here, on July 2nd, 1881, Garfield was shot twice by a disgruntled man named Charles Guiteau. The first bullet grazed Garfield's arm, but the second lodged itself into his lower back. Oof. This bullet managed to miss all of his major arteries and vital organs, and it is generally believed that Garfield actually would have survived this injury had it happened today.
Mm-hmm. But hand washing, people. Hand washing.
Precisely. Sanitation and sterilization were not then what they are today. And instead, as doctors tended to Garfield, they were shoving their typhoid Mary fingers into his wound in an attempt to locate the bullet. Mm-hmm. It is understood that Garfield eventually died as a result of an infection and the overall lack of sanitation by his medical professionals. Mm-hmm. What's crazy is that Garfield didn't die until 2 months after he was shot. So he was still quote unquote serving as president of the United States for 2 months while his body dropped nearly 100 pounds in only 80 days and was slowly succumbing to sepsis.
Right. So he wasn't really serving as president. Someone was signing those papers for him.
There was an auto pen, 100%. And this was something that was largely obviously hidden from the public at the time.
Yeah.
But stay tuned for the next season of the podcast for more on that. Garfield's vice president, Chester A. Arthur, rolled in
as
another
name. I literally, who?
See, for me, Rutherford B. Hayes and Benjamin Harris are those names for me. I'm like, Arthur, okay. I know so much about him. I do actually. That was not me joking. I know too much. Garfield's vice president, Chester A. Arthur, rolled in as the 21st president of the United States, serving one term from 1881 to 1885. The biggest thing, in my opinion, that Arthur did as president was sign the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Okay.
We know about this. Mm-hmm. This is the act that made it so that Chinese laborers could not immigrate to the United States for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And for Chinese people that were already in the States, it made it so that they could not apply for citizenship and forced them to carry certificates on their person at all times that proved their legal status. This was a huge piece of legislation and had massive impacts which is why I already have the Chinese Exclusion Act lined up as an episode for next season.
Wow, you're just tying them all in.
I am just really contractualizing myself to a lot of things right now.
I love it. I love it.
Accountability. Yep. Arthur did not seek re-election because he learned while president that he had a fatal kidney illness. He knew that he was dying throughout his entire presidency, though he only told a few of his closest people. No one in the public knew. In fact, we didn't know. History didn't know about his illness until the 1970s. Arthur was so adamant about his health remaining a secret that when he died from this disease, less than 2 years after serving as president, he ordered his sons to supervise the burning of the majority of his personal records.
Oh, boy. Also, like, why do you care?
Yeah, like after
while you're
death.
president. Yeah, no, totally. Like, while you're president, sure, I get it. You want to hide any sign of weakness, but like, you're not president anymore. Who cares?
It's fragile male egos, I think. That might be the answer.
Yep.
The 22nd president of the United States, Grover Cleveland, served from 1885 to 1889. What is the most fascinating fact about Cleveland is that until Trump, Cleveland was the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms.
I knew this.
Yeah. He was both the 22nd and the 24th president, which I find so interesting. It was during Cleveland's presidency that the United States accepted the Statue of Liberty as a gift from France. The drank is, I'm getting a little twang. Cleveland did begin his presidency as a bachelor, but while serving as president, he married Frances Folsom, who was only 21 at the time, making her the youngest first lady. For context, Cleveland was 49, and Folsom was the daughter of his former law partner. Ewy, ewy.
Yeah.
As we talked about in our episode 94, Cleveland actually had an undercover operation conducted on a private yacht to have a cancerous tumor removed from his mouth while he was president. Do you remember this one?
Yes, I do.
He kept this information hidden from the public. Not long into his second term, he noticed that he had this bump on the roof of his mouth. Cleveland was scheduled to address Congress in August of that year. And so he decided, I need to have this tumor removed and be fully recovered from the surgery by the August date. Not wanting to alarm the public regarding his condition, he made the decision that this surgery would have to remain a secret. He reached out to a friend of his that owned a yacht.
Like, why a yacht? Why not go to, like...
Is this not terrifying? Like, yes, let's go on moving bumpy water while you were in my mouth.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to operate on my toe, maybe. When you're, like, in close proximity to my brain and my eyeballs and things like that, no, thank you.
There's some major arteries in your face and
all of them, almost all of them. Yeah, it's poor decision making.
Yeah.
So he reaches out to a friend of his that owned a yacht and then had a public announcement made that he was going on a 4-day fishing trip on the yacht with a buddy.
Could you imagine the public being like, who gives a fuck? Like, why is he telling
that would be like Trump announcing every single time he's golfing. Like, we already know.
Don't care.
We already know that you're wasting taxpayer dollars. We don't care. Have fun on your yacht.
Yeah.
What the public didn't know, however, was that this yacht had been converted into a surgical center with 6 surgeons on board. The surgery took place on July 1st, 1893, and took about 90 minutes in total. The tumor was found to be larger than originally anticipated and ended up requiring, in order to fully remove the tumor, the removal of 5 teeth and part of the jawbone.
No biggie. We're on
or was that because they were on a moving yacht? They're like, we meant to take out 1 tooth, and suddenly there's 5.
Yeah.
The president would lose inches off of his palate, which would later be filled in by way of an implant. Cleveland feared, though, that if his signature mustache had been compromised in the course of the surgery, you remember, because it was a big one.
It was a big boy. It was a big boy, guys.
It would have been noticeable if something happened to the mustache.
Yep.
And he was worried that if it was compromised in the course of the surgery, that the public would know. that he had lied about his yacht trip.
Honestly, after having seen that mustache, I get it.
It's the most distinguishable thing about him. Like,
under that mustache, there's a white man. I don't know.
Here's what I know about Grover Cleveland. We have talked ad nauseum that I do know all these people. I can't possibly know a million details about all of them. So when
you don't know what they all look like, I bet. Can you picture every single one of them? You can't. I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
Yes, I can.
That was stupid.
Yes, I can. But I could guarantee that I know 1 to 2 facts about all of them, right? Like, I couldn't tell you I know 10 things about all of them. The 2 facts I know about Grover Cleveland is that he's the 2 non-consecutive term president, and he's the mustache president. That's what I know about him.
He's the mustache guy.
So to your point about him without a mustache, you might not recognize him. I would not, as someone that does know all the presidents by face, that does recognize them all. Without the mustache, I don't know who this man is. I'm sorry, I do not know this man.
Who is he?
Luckily for him, though, the surgeons were able to complete the surgery without touching his precious stash. Cleveland was able to address Congress in August and generally appeared to recover rather well from the secret surgery, but the media wouldn't leave him alone. The media was suspicious about this 4-day trip.
Like, why did he have to announce it?
Just go.
Just go, Grover.
But you will recall, perhaps, that like about 2 months ago, Trump disappeared for a handful of days.
Yeah, and everybody thought he was sick or something, or he had died.
And so I'm just saying, to that point, like, in today's day and age,
today, sure, this was the 1800s. I still think people didn't have social media. People didn't have the paparazzi.
They did. The president often did like daily addresses to the public and things like that.
Okay.
Today, it's very noticeable when the president disappears for 4 days, as evidenced by a couple months ago when we all thought maybe Trump had died because we didn't hear from him for like a week. No civil liberties were destroyed for a 7-day period, and everyone was like, "What the hell's going on?"
We were like, "What's happening?
What is happening? We haven't been stripped of all of our rights yet, just a couple of them." And so in that day and age, maybe not to the same degree as now, but it still was noticeable if the president went missing. And so he was hounded by the media. And after being hounded by the media, one of the doctors did end up spilling the beans and telling the press about the secret surgery.
Yeah. Again, I know fragile male ego is at play here as well, but like, I feel like we could have just done like a Kate Middleton thing where like when it's happening, obviously keep it under wraps. You don't want to worry people, but then once you're past it and you're moving on, who cares?
100%, because it has to lend to the fragile male ego, because Cleveland denied the rumors. So
like, that's silly.
It's stupid. It is stupid. It's like it was something that was not your fault, an unpreventable thing that you took care of in an extremely unsafe way. It's like, am I judging you, or yes? I was like, wait, that sentence didn't come out well. Do I have hesitations about you being the president because you have a tumor? Not necessarily because
of the tumor.
That's not your fault.
Yeah.
The judgment comes with this huge lack of transparency, the secrecy, and perhaps poor decision making of having a massive surgery conducted on your head on a yacht. So you know what? Actually, yes, I do have reservations about this man serving as president. He has poor judgment. But anyway, he denies these rumors about the surgery, and he actually even began a rather successful smear campaign against the loose-lipped doctor.
Oh, cool.
The story of the surgery would continue to remain, for the most part, a secret until nearly a decade after Cleveland's death. The truth was finally revealed. The 23rd president of the United States was Benjamin Harris, serving one term from 1889 to 1893. During his presidency, 6 new states were added to the Union. He was the first president to hire a female staffer to the White House. And we have him to thank for our display of American flags over public buildings and schools.
Cool. Thanks.
Right. That's why, like I said, I do know all these guys, but if I'm going to forget one of their names, it's always Benjamin Harris.
Okay.
We already know who the 24th president of the United States was, because we already talked about him serving 2 non-consecutive presidential terms. This is, of course, Grover Cleveland, who now served from 1893 to 1897. And then finally, we are rounding out this part 1 episode with another presidential assassination. That would be the 25th president of the United States, William McKinley, who served from 1897 to 1901. McKinley was the last president to have fought in the Civil War, which I think is pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
During his presidency, the U.S. won the Spanish-American War. He also annexed a lot of additional land, including Hawaii, which is a whole thing in and of itself, and perhaps also an episode for next season. But like I already said, McKinley was assassinated. During a public appearance, a man named Leon Czolgosz approached him as if he was going to shake his hand, but hidden under a handkerchief that he had over his hand was a gun, which he used to shoot the president twice in the stomach. McKinley would die from his wound 8 days later. We talked all about McKinley's assassination when we had Mike from Necronomipod on the podcast for a bonus episode. I highly recommend you check out that one. It was a really fun episode to record, and Mike is so knowledgeable about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Following McKinley's sudden death, his vice president quickly assumed the presidency, and his vice president was this little known guy that I know no one has ever heard of.
No.
A man named Teddy Roosevelt.
Who?
Right. That's why we're going to talk about him, so that we can learn about this guy. And that's where we're going to pick up with the second part of this episode next season.
You know, I'm going to be honest. I like that you're stretching this across 2 seasons.
Thanks. I was like, we've never done this before where we have split a topic across 2 seasons, but I'm actually really excited about the idea. I think that the brain needs time to digest the amount of information, right?
It's also a lot of U.S. presidents.
Yes. It can be exhausting, right?
Yeah.
It can be exhausting to hear about
all these white guys.
Them. So. Fair point. So I do think that the brain needs time to, whether it be digest the amount of information we threw at you or just simply reject the information that I threw at you. We need a month or 2 before we can prepare ourselves for presidents 26 through 47.
Yeah, I think we need more than that for number 47.
Presidents 26 through 44, which is where we stop acknowledging them. So get ready for that and so much more in the next season of the podcast.
Cool.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Hashtag History.
All sources used to put together this episode can be found on our website at hashtaghistory-pod.com.
Thank you so much to my husband, Alex, for editing this massively long episode and every episode of the podcast. You're the best.
We could not do this without you. We could not.
We wouldn't do it without you. Subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use. Share about us with your family and friends, and then give us a rate and review.
And be sure to check us out on Instagram. We are at #history_podcast.
And come join us over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help support our books and booze supply. This is a place where you can just support the podcast, and in exchange for your support, you'll receive an automatic 15% off all merchandise, and we mail you cards and stickers. And I just now realized that now that we're wrapping up a season, that means that there's a whole nother season of open cocktail sponsorship spots.
Yeah.
So on our Instagram that Leah mentioned earlier, you can go check out the link in our bio for the website that you can sponsor a cocktail in the upcoming season. And if you sponsor a cocktail, we give you a shout out during the episode and on Instagram.
Yeah, you can leave us a little cute note, and then if it's appropriate to do so, we'll read it to people.
If you're not nasty about it, we can share it. All right, thanks.
All right, thanks.
Bye.